Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about Justin the Highlight Gaethje. He's fighting Rafael Fiziev here in about a day. It is 1:26 in the morning. Thought about doing a video, so hope you guys enjoy this one. Kind of just talking about Justin Gaethje a little bit. My thoughts on him since coming to the UFC. What do I think he's lived up to the hype that he came in with, all those years ago? So I guess first we're going to start with, he's 36 years old. He's 25-5. He'll be 37 in November. He has 21 finishes, but he's been finished 5 times, 2 by submission, 3 by finish, 8-5 in the UFC. So again, let's start at the beginning. So beats Luis Firmina. I believe he beat him 3 times. Yeah, I guess 3 times right here. So yeah, beats him 3 times, comes in, fights Michael Johnson, and Michael Johnson was honestly getting the best of him. That's a fight. It's on YouTube, I believe, for free. Either way, you can find it, you can watch it. Back and forth fight. Michael Johnson kind of getting better at the exchanges, and then he ends up gassing out, and Justin Gaethje pulls ahead and beats Michael Johnson. So then he gets his first big test, not that much after the Michael Johnson fight. Fights Eddie Alvarez, dominating Eddie Alvarez. Gets a little too comfortable. Eddie makes the adjustments he needs to make, and Eddie Alvarez ends up finishing Justin Gaethje. Then Justin Gaethje fights Dustin Poirier, and honestly, probably his worst performance in his UFC career. Dustin Poirier beat the crap out of him for 4 rounds until he got the finish. The best thing that Justin Gaethje did in that fight, honestly, was the leg kicks. And he was just getting pieced apart by Dustin Poirier. Then, after losing 2 fights in a row, 1 and 2 in the UFC, he fights he beats James Vick, Barboza, Cowboy Tony, and then he fights Khabib. So you look at the James Vick fight, a lot of trash talk, a lot of bad blood going into that fight, and James Vick, not known to really be able to take a punch at that point and on, loses to him, beats Edson Barboza, beats Cowboy, and beats Tony Ferguson on a pretty short notice matchup for Gaethje against Tony Ferguson. Goes almost all 5 rounds, but gets stopped about 3:40 into the 5th. It was a very, very hard fight to watch if you're a Tony Ferguson fan, especially because knowing he's never been the same since that fight. Then he loses to Khabib Nurmagomedov in round number 2. Not really that close a fight. Did some good with the leg kicks, but the threat of the takedown for Khabib was just so evident. It was crazy. Back then, all the way back in, I guess, 2020, October 24th, 2020, I already thought Justin had a chance of beating Gaethje. Wrestling background and all this stuff. I just thought he had a chance. The problem with that is, hindsight-wise, looking back at it, Justin Gaethje doesn't use his wrestling. And because he doesn't use it, he's not training it, so his defense is never going to hold up. You should have known that, but hindsight's 2020. So gets dominated by Khabib. Then he fights Michael Chandler, and it's a weird one because you look at that fight and it's like, all right, it's 1-1 going into the 3rd. What does Michael Chandler do? I just punch you in the face. I'm going to show you how tough I am. Nobody is questioning Michael Chandler's toughness. That's crazy. But it's a fight that he could have won. That's the craziest part about it. He could have won that matchup. It doesn't even make any sense. And then Gaethje wins. And then he fights Charles Oliveira, and Charles Oliveira, Gaethje, I believe, drops Oliveira early in the 1st, and Oliveira drops him, hurts him right away, and then drops him again and gets the rear naked choke and all that stuff. But I believe Gaethje hurt Oliveira some point in there. But again, that was a pretty dominating performance for Charles Oliveira. Then he fights Rafael Fiziev and Dustin Poirier. I thought Fiziev won that fight. I thought he won the 1st and 2nd round. 10-8 in the 3rd is all right. It's a draw. Fine. Either way, somewhere around the Tony Ferguson fight, he started to pull back a little bit and not necessarily be the highlight, but sometimes have highlight finishes. Because like Tony he finished, Gaethje decision, Rafael Fiziev decision. So like Dustin Poirier finished, but Poirier was lighting him up. I mean, he was getting beat up in that fight. And then he fights Max Holloway. And also, there's this thing where Justin Gaethje is in the press conference for UFC 313, and he's talking about the Max Holloway fight, and he's like, I fought well in that fight. No, sir, you didn't. You did drop Max in the 4th round, I believe it was. You didn't fight very well. You got beat up from when the fight said, let's go, till you were face down on the canvas. Like, you didn't fight very well. Now, were you competitive? Sure. I guess that could mean you fought well, but you were getting beat up. Were you durable and tough? Sure. Max has no power, and yet Max still knocked you out. So it's a very complicated, thing. Loses the Max with 1 second left of the 5th round. Supposed to fight Hooker. That falls through. And then now he's fighting Rafael Fiziev. Hooker broke his hand, of course. Of course he did. And then now he's fighting Rafael Fiziev. So, again, to me, do I think he's lived up to the hype? No, I don't. I honestly do not think Justin Gaethje has lived up to the hype coming over from the WSOF. And again, I think a lot of it is like, I don't think pulling back as much as he has. I don't think as much as he's tried to pace himself and pick his shots a little bit better, it's necessarily made him more exciting, honestly. Because like the Fiziev fight, sure, he was defensively all right in the first and half of the second until he came on at the end of the second into the third. Sure. Does he get finished or beat up if he is the old Justin Gaethje? Possibly. Same thing with the Poirier. So sure, you can say that. But like Charles Oliveira, him waiting and trying to pick his shots did not help him in that fight. It just didn't. The same thing with the Khabib. You picking your shots and not necessarily being the highlight, that didn't help you by waiting. It didn't help you. The Max Holloway, it didn't help you. Being just in the highlight reel, Gaethje, the highlight, 7 years, 8-5, okay, fine. 3-3 in his last 6, but the biggest problem I have is like, I think he beats Cowboy, Barboza, Vic the same way, even if he fought those guys the same as he fought Michael Johnson. He lost to Vince Poirier, but the Eddie Alvarez fight, he was very competitive early, and that's just Eddie Alvarez figuring out the problems that defensively that Justin had. All right. That's a good performance, or good comeback, good reads by Eddie Alvarez. Dustin Poirier literally just beat the crap out of him. He needed to, I believe he also came back too soon. Yeah, December 2nd, he was finished by Eddie. He came back in April 2018. So, not very long, and not long enough for me personally. And then he finishes 4 guys in a row, so there's an issue. But yeah, I like Gaethje. I just think he's a little bit overrated. And I know people are not going to like to hear that, but I just think he is. I think the things that we liked Gaethje for, he hasn't necessarily been that guy in a long time. He just hasn't. He hasn't been that dude. But as always, guys, let me know what you guys are thinking. What is your guys' opinion? What's your guys' prediction for the UFC Justin Gaethje Rafael Fiziev fight? And 1:36 in the morning. I hope you guys liked it. I enjoyed doing it. And as always, if you guys want me to talk about some other fighter, let me know down there in the comment section. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.